guys. I love it. See, we have our box in the background. Welcome, welcome. So we are starting back up with our community roundtables, and right now we are doing them once a month. So the fourth Monday of every month, and today we have all of us here, Mr. Amazing Coach X, Xavier Smith, Alex TD, and we'll see if we have anybody else joining us a little bit later. And I'm Palace, and today we're going to be talking about beginnings, whatever that means for each one of us. We're all currently working on doing lives for these 12 pillars of transformation, just of being a human, from a human level all the way up to community, and what all of these different aspects and elements really mean to us in order to achieve that. So beginnings will be where we start today. So who would like to start it off?
With the idea of beginnings, as you were finishing saying that, it started to remind me of like a very kind of theological or philosophical idea of what beginnings are as like human beings, and then it just reminded me of like, as far as like evolutionary perspectives are concerned, it's like how did we begin? Supposedly as like little sea paramecium, so like amoebas, single-celled organism kind of things. But like even before that, on a more like esoteric and spiritual level, how did we as human beings begin? And beings is kind of a similar word to beginnings too. Now that I'm saying it out loud, but just like as far as like cosmic or spiritual elements are concerned, like where and how, obviously all these questions that have gone unanswered for a really long time and have plenty of scientific theories and work behind it to try and develop it. But anyway, so that's where my brain's starting at.
Gotcha. I like that, Alex. I'll piggyback on that. I'm gonna go the opposite way for today. My first mindset was one of practicality, and where I found my thoughts going was simply waking up to a new day. Because about 48 hours ago, I was in a totally different state. Like I'm here in Arizona now, but just a little while ago, I was totally on the opposite side of the country in a brand new state, new environment. And then I came back, and I got some funny stories to share with you. But new beginnings, or beginnings for that matter, just makes me think of when I open my eyes from slumber, I have a new opportunity, a new beginning to create my own reality, a new opportunity to pour into someone else's life deliberately with positive energy versus default, which I found myself living for like 17 years, living by default, kind of like a piece of driftwood on the sea of life with no purpose, no drive, no nothing, just kind of floating along. Can you relate?
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking. What about you, Palace?
Yeah, a lot in that direction, because for you guys, having been talking to me for Xavier several years now, and Alex pretty much the last year, a lot of my stories come back to my journey of being sick. And for me, coming out of all of that over these last couple of years, but really the first time of really waking up out of it, it was coming out of this fog. And I was driving home from taking my kids to school. And up until that point, one of the things for me was I could barely emotionally connect with anything around me. It was like the world was flat or black, white, versus, Technicolor or, a cartoon, all the colors of life. So
Right.
I was living in this flat black and white world for years. And coming back from school, it was spring, and I was driving west towards the mountains, and I noticed the mountains snow-capped, the sun was out, and they just looked absolutely beautiful. And in that moment, it just took my breath away of having this emotional connection to the world around me versus not even being consciously aware of it because my existence had been so flat. And it was in that moment of literally feeling like this veil had been pulled back of a new beginning, back into the world, showing up into the world again. And I think, to make a long, super complicated story, really compressed, I feel that my life living up to getting sick, and all the journey that went on in between, I didn't realize that I was living by default. I didn't realize that I was living in a reactionary place and also living in a place of not recognizing the truth of reality around me, the truth of divinity, just the truth of whatever that means in my life. And I spent many years partying my ass off to avoid the truth, to avoid how I felt. When I was partying with my friends and I was like the life of the whatever, like everything was good. And then in those in-between times, there was the emotions that would come up and there was the mega stress and things like that. And so there's so many levels and layers to tease apart with that. But just, suffice it to say, if I had worked in my life as hard as I partied, I would be one of the richest people on this planet. And that's a whole lot of investment into my life for avoiding the things that hurt, And so I didn't realize that until after going through the things, my journey, my health journey, the things that fell apart, and then moving into the alternative medicine side of the world and starting to, as we like to say, unpack our stories, unpack the things, and just the levels and layers of that kind of living and where it can put you in your life is truly a beginning for me, because it's waking up out of being not being consciously aware, thinking I am, but not. Like, you're not until all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, where am I? And so this last couple years has been a real new beginning for me in this whole redefinition of myself and recognizing these patterns and these players in my life of all the things to get to where I'm at now.
I got to stop you right there, Palace, and because I'm thinking that somebody might be watching this later and wonder, where exactly are you talking about in your world? Where the area that you're talking about? Because you live in Colorado, right?
Yes.
So spend a moment and talk about the beauty that surrounds you in your neck of the woods.
Oh, absolutely. So where I live, well, in my office from right here, just looking out my window, I face west, and I can see the front range of the Rocky Mountains. And jumping in my car, I could be on a hiking trail in the mountains in about 15 minutes at a trailhead. Yeah, like I'm just right there. And I'm situated between, there's Denver, Golden, and Boulder, kind of this little trifecta area, each one 15 to 25 minutes away from me. And just looking out my window at the mountains, there's a mesa over this direction. And then if I get on the top part of my neighborhood, I can look at the Flatirons on the Front Range, which are just breathtakingly beautiful. And it's the high plains, it's Colorado, and it's just phenomenal. I guess stepping on my front porch and looking south, I can see Lookout Mountain. And that's where like all the Chinook winds come down through that valley, and just would love to take out the neighborhoods if they could. I mean, the winds can clock 90 miles plus an hour where I'm at.
Wow.
But just the absolute beauty of where I'm at. Also, when I step back and reflect upon the people that colonized this place, like, I don't know how they did it. I just don't know how they did it. The intensity of the weather, the intensity of the winds, the starkness of the land, and living here in our buttoned up houses and our heavy cars where we don't have to generally worry about them getting flipped over by the winds. That's
Right.
not always the case, versus like the people that founded it in their covered wagons and the things. Like I don't know how it was done. It's so amazing. But the people that founded this, man, they have had to be like super powered human beings.
Right. I remember some stories because I spent some time recently, a few months back now, learning a little bit about the history of Colorado and some of the caves systems that I was brought into my life experience. Some of the stuff that these guys had to go through. I'm talking a mile of crawling into a cave just to get to one area, and then a couple of miles crawling and like both ways. And they did this on a regular. And I'm up here thinking, who am I to complain about any damn thing?
I know, right? It's when we reframe the life we have and how easy access that we have to these things and the physical protections that most of us have. It's just it's like, what am I complaining about?
Mind blowing, right?
Yes.
Now, Alex, you're also in Colorado, but maybe perhaps a different neighborhood. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So tell me about your life experience as to where you are.
So I'm definitely more of a homebody, kind of like an indoor kitty. So I honestly haven't had a lot of explorative experiences since I've been here the last couple of years.
Okay.
I mean, I have had the chance to go with others to like a hiking trail up a smaller mountain. There's a really interesting township kind of place called Crestone down south. It's an interesting place to visit. Good people there for sure. It's just, if you're in one of the normal areas and then you go to Crestone, you're like, this is a whole other world down here.
Right.
And there's like the sand. There's like a little mini desert down there too. It's like
sand dunes.
Yeah, sand dunes.
Right.
People rent boards, like
Yeah.
snowboards, to board down these dunes.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
So like I've gotten to have a little taste of some places, and then when I was young, I had the chance to visit Vail and Aspen, Colorado. So like I've had bits and pieces, kind of like a Costco sampler, going around all the different places, and you get a little bite here and there.
Right. That's awesome.
One of my best friends bought a house down in Crestone. It's actually a house that was designed to also, it's a house / dojo. It was built that way. And so she moved down there from Denver. She's also my body talk practitioner. But she has, she was with Enshin Karate off of Colfax in Denver. And she moved down there and she started a dojo along with energy medicine and things. And Crestone, Xavier, is basically considered, it's one of our high energy matrices, kind of like, it's like the Sedona of Colorado in that way. Yeah.
I know exactly what you're talking about now.
Yeah, it has like energy. It's that kind of community, the energy vortexes. It's very deeply spiritual community down there. Man. And it's probably like an hour from Taos, New Mexico. If you're like directionally, it's down towards Telluride, down that direction.
Okay, cool beans. Yeah, that to me, all the stuff that we just talked about kind of makes me feel like this is how like beginnings start. What I'd like to do is ask each one of you like a power question, because when people watch this later, just because I feel like they're going to want to know a little bit more about us individually. My power question to you guys is, if money were no object, where would I go today, right now? Who wants to answer that question?
Where would I go to visit, or where would I plant my life? Maybe.
That's yours to decide.
Yeah. Well, what I would love to be able to say I wouldn't go anywhere because I have everything that I need right here. But
But
full of abundance. But for me, if money was no object, I would move out of a suburban area, and I would move as off the grid as I could and have satellite to uplink for my internet whenever I need to and this kind of work. But I would have a ranch. I've been looking I'm on several ranch, like I get pinged when things come up in different places because I'm like, where's my dream? So I don't have like a actual place to go yet. It's more kind of putting the energy out there, because I can see at some point in my life kind of where I want to take my practice and my contributions to the CLN is I would really love to do like agro-tourism, kind of have that big ranch or that farm and be able to monetize that by bringing people in to experience that, the outdoors, that ranch land experience, but intermix that with an outrigger company and outdoor, just getting out of your comfort zone and doing things that you wouldn't normally do, adventures, things like that. So I would want, if money was no object, I would want to land in a situation like that would have access to water and access to opportunities for pushing boundaries, connecting to nature, experiencing all four seasons, and just getting out there. That would be
nice. I love it. Love that. What about you, Alex?
Some place that I would really like to visit is Abu Dhabi.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh, nice.
Yeah, there's something about that particular environment and the way that they've created it. Like
right.
there's no other way around it. Like they've created it, and I feel something would be healing to be able to witness and experience that location.
Nice.
For me personally.
I know exactly what that's like. I've seen enough of those shows on TV about it, and I'm like, wow.
Yeah.
So to be there would be totally next level.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it? I don't even know how they've done what they've done out there.
Right. Like when, as far as like talking about being effective as deliberate creators and taking whatever wisdom and knowledge you have and condensing that to the earth plane, and what has become as a result of that in the location of Abu Dhabi is like, holy buckets. Like, talk about wisdom and resources and abundance and lots of things that many strive for or aspire to. And now it's not to say that they have like the ideal standard for everything, because there's a lot of culture clashing that goes on.
Mm-hmm.
But many of those things aside, just some of the more obvious and objective things that are present are just like, like, I got some things to learn from those people. Like how did you do what you did?
Right.
Granted, it's taken them however many decades to build the modernized version of what's currently there, and centuries before that to develop the individuals who make up that place to be able to create that in the first place. So there's a lot of deliberateness, there's a lot of intention, there's a lot of yeah. So organizationally speaking, the structure is pretty sound and also quite awesome in and of itself.
I like that. Yeah, I would have to agree with you. The feats that have taken place in that area alone, there's really nothing else that can compare to it. But as far as I'm concerned, if money were no object, I'd probably go off the grid completely. Nobody would be able to find me for at least a month, just so I can just kind of unplug. And I would find myself in the villages of Costa Rica.
Mm.
And
I love Costa. Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
We might run into each other then, sorry.
Well, that would be a welcome, because that energy, something about that place pulls me versus pushes. And the curiosity factor just continues to rise. Every time I hear the name, I'm like, whew, my ears perk up, my tail wags and everything. So that's got my interest right now. I saw a documentary about the education and how it's totally a complete departure from what we have here in the States.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Yes, wow. And I'm like, we are doing some things totally so wrong. So
sideways, backwards, all sorts of ways.
I would find myself there in that space and just kind of absorbing as much as I could. And I probably would come back just to regurgitate my life experience to those who are aligned with my energy. I would probably find myself in like Dublin, Greenland, just weird places like that, just to see what happens.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's kind of where I see myself if again money were no object.
Speaking of beginnings, that's like its own form of the hero's journey right there. You're talking about, ooh, I got this pull somewhere, tail wagging and everything, and then whatever you're going there for, and then coming back, and that's kind of like the magic gift or whatever that you bring back and share that with whomever. That's funny.
Yeah, I feel that way about Costa. It's been like 13, almost 14 years since I've been there. We went there on our honeymoon, and I think one of the things that really stuck out to me about Costa was how they did actually, talking about beginnings, one of the ways that they had to reinvent themselves was after they basically gave up their military. In effect, they then became purely an eco tourism country. So they basically gave up guns, they gave up hunting, all of that. And so they no longer hunt their animals, and they cultivate the animals. And they've turned their entire, at least 13 years ago, they turned their entire economy around to foundationally support bringing in tourism through the eco lens.
Whoa.
Yeah, which is really cool. And I have one of my best friends lives down there, and she owns over 100 acres of farmland in the jungle. And she's part of this community down in Costa of, I think there's Americans, probably some French. I mean, most of the colonization is from the US and France and maybe one or two other European countries. But what they've been doing is they've been reclaiming the land because there has been so much deforestation over the time, and there has been so much abuse of the land, and there has been so much, but also with that, with the torrential rains that they have. It rains up your nose, not down. Like the rains are crazy down there. That these animals lost their ability to have any actual pathways that go across the country any longer. They don't have their natural migratory patterns. And so this community, they have been planting trees, they've been reclaiming the land, and between them and these others, they've created this pathway, this green belt, I guess you could say. It's not the right term though, where these animals can actually migrate all the way back up to San Jose now, where these which is the capital of Costa Rica, is where the animals have been getting pushed further and further back into the jungles because they've lost their ability to navigate. And everything that they're doing is about new beginnings in an old system, and being able to do things like that and impact entire ecosystems in that way. Like if the animals are thriving, then the people are going to be thriving. Like you can't have one dominant over the other ultimately without having a sickness, a disruption in the ecosystem somewhere. So yeah, there's so much about it down there.
All of that in the best ways that apply, copy and paste that up here, because it sounds like we need some of that up here.
Oh gosh.
And even Western Europe, Yep.
So,
right.
I'm definitely with you on that, man. Definitely.
Just saying.
It's so funny.
We need some new beginnings.
Yeah. Well, I think this is the impetus right here. We speak of it, and we're putting it out there, like Palace had mentioned earlier. When you put stuff like out there, here's what I have discovered in my personal journey. You already know what you don't want, so therefore it brings to light what you do want. The problem with most people is they keep their attention and their focus on all the BS that they don't want. And therefore it keeps recycling that. So if I could pass along any, I guess, guidance or influence, because at best all we have is influence, if I can pass any of that on, it would be to spend more time focusing on what you do want and less time focusing on the BS that you don't. And with practice, emphasis, asterisk on the word practice, you will discover a brand new life. And I'm only saying that with confidence because that was me. And I couldn't see that. I couldn't see myself doing that because you really can't, like Les Brown, borrowing from Les Brown now, but most people can't see their problems because they're in the picture of their damn self.
Yeah.
So I had a big crutch to get over, and that was forgiveness. And once I did that, got on the phone with my parents and told them I let them off the hook. That is when, as Palace said, the veil was taken from my eyes, and even though I had my eyes open, I actually could see what was going on. And that's when my life began changing some years ago. And the beautiful thing is, it's always changing. Your work is never done. And when it is, you're dead. So I just I'm just making a decision to have fun each and every breath that I take, because each breath brings in new opportunity and a new beginning.
So I'm curious, Xavier, because we all talk about these things on the side, but not in public. It's everything that's gone on over this we'll stick with a year. So for some of us, those conversations naturally route to new beginnings and new awakenings and moving out of the age of chaos into the age of truth, whatever. Like, how would you guys, what is your experience with this last year and endings or beginnings or where you're at now or being stuck? Like, how can beginnings apply to this tsunami that we've all been riding this last year?
Well, I think the best for me personally, let's just change gears for a moment and switch out that word, switch out the word that we've been using and just replace it with the word opportunity, because that is what I have chosen that's the story I have chosen to tell myself. This last year has been an incredible opportunity for growth. Now, since growth is going to happen whether you want it or not, I might as well make the decision to embrace the BS, the good, the bad, the ugly, the indifferent, and build whatever the hell I can with what I have, and turn it into a story that more pleases me than anything else. And so the couple of words that I have found myself resonating with is ease, efficiency, and of course, excellence. But everything that I do, everything that I put out, if you guys haven't noticed, I'm not sure if I have a chance on influencing anybody, but everything that I do is everything that I put out is geared towards my 3 verbs: impacting, inspiring, or helping someone improve their life for the better. If I do one, hopefully one, or maybe all 3 of them with somebody, then I feel like my job is complete. So for me, that's how I have been telling a new story, creating a new beginning, because like I said earlier, we are all creators of our own reality. And if each one really believed that, then we can go into each day reconstructing our own reality, and not face reality like most people want us to do, but create reality. If you have an effed up situation, then change it, because you have the power to.
Yeah.
It may take a while, and you may not want to do some of the work that is required of you, but it's possible. And I only say that with confidence because I did it. I'm still doing it. So yeah, that's how I would answer that question.
So, being a willing participant in your own path, your own. If the whole life is a stage thing, you're the actor day in and day out. You're deciding what that role looks like, moment to moment, day to day.
Alex, I got a meme just for that. You guys want to hear it? I haven't even shared it with anybody.
No? All right.
So the meme I thought of a couple of nights ago was, every movie gets better because we all know our roles. Because I'm a big fan of Denzel, and everything he puts out, right, for the most part, it's like spot on. Because he's at that level where he gets to choose his projects, and he's producing them now. So he gets to pull in all the pieces, all the cooperative components to make a masterpiece. We have that same ability in our own lives. So I'm glad you brought that little saying up, because that's the meme that I had in my head.
So for both of you guys, in talking about creating our own reality, for people, who are just tuning in, who are maybe new to the concept that we have the ability to do anything at all about our current state of affairs. So many people are stuck in that place of that reactionary, that not realizing that we have that control or ability. I don't know if control is the right word, but the opportunities to shift, the opportunities to create. How can you share that to somebody who's brand new about this concept that would be different?
So I would begin by inviting them to watch my personal beginnings video, because I definitely describe that in that video. And previously in this conversation, we had a beautiful transition that illustrated the way that I described it, with how Xavier began by talking about waking up each day.
Mm-hmm.
And then it kind of moved forward to like what Palace was saying about like, okay, but stuff happens. But what do I do when stuff happens? Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so to bring some of that description into the conversation, have you ever noticed the shape of the pause button on a remote control?
Mm.
It's the two
Mm-hmm.
the two lines.
Yeah.
Okay. So there's the beginning and there's the end. And the pause button is that space that's in between the beginning and the end, right?
Yeah.
So, and I tried to get as basic and simple as I can in that video with the whole thing about beginnings and the way that you're asking. But to try and condense it a little bit further, Xavier mentioned this a little bit ago briefly about every breath is a new chance, is a new moment. So, the cycle of beginnings is ever present, and so when I talk about interpersonally, like the things that Xavier is talking about going in the future and being able to create reality, and then something that Palace talks a lot about with integrative medicine is, okay, but what about the stuff that happened? What about the past and the trauma, right? So our breath is probably the most simplistic way that we can kind of hijack our own bodies and our own experience back, right? And I've been working on that breathwork discovery course that's coming out here pretty quick too. So nice. Showing people how that can be done in so many different ways in a manner that might be most effective for them. So being able to hijack our bodies back with our breath to give ourselves that chance to reconnect physically and mentally, so that way we're in control of ourselves in that space in between the past and the future. It's kind of the present, but kind of like a limbo stage of presence. So it's present, but it's still ongoing, so it's presence, because it's continuing. And so that's like the most basic way that I can describe and answer that question, Palace, is think of the pause button, hijack your body back, reconnect, and that way whatever has happened, while yes, past experiences might be similar and even helpful at times, what are we creating? What are we wanting? Because if we're focusing on back here, what's beyond this side of the pause button in the past, then it's, you're just going to keep doing this, whatever, But then if we're always looking to the future, we're like, oh, okay, but it's like, it's moving, it feels like it's moving, but it's not actually going anywhere. So then, what are we as individuals doing with that space in between? And that's where the pause comes from.
Always the moment of now.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Well, for me, Palace, to answer that question, again, for me, it's always going to the practical, because for me personally, I want to make people feel as comfortable as possible to even open up comfortable enough to even open up dialogue with me, with you, with anybody in the CLN. And I think right now, the biggest question that people can ask themselves is, what's possible for my life today? And I say that because that's the question I had to ask when I was ready to do the work on the inside. What's possible for my life today? Just asking yourself that question, whether out loud or repeatedly to yourself, begins to engage your frontal cortex of the mind. And it has to go to work to answer that question. Whether you are privy to it or not, it's doing the work in the background, like software running in the background of your computer. It's doing the work. You may not be notice it, but it's still doing the work. It's pulling all those pieces together. Your job as a human is to sit back and watch, be witness to the answering, be witness to the unfolding. So that would be a question that I would invite any person that is wanting something more out of their life to ask themselves what's possible, and then be willing to put your pride aside and ask for help. That would be people like you, Palace, people like you, Alex.
Mm-hmm.
Be willing to say, hey, I got my hand up. What do you have to offer? And then shut the hell up and listen. Because when that alignment happens, the answers come in. Something about what Palace says is going to resonate with you. Something about what Alex says is going to just be like I said earlier, your ears will perk up, your tail starts wagging, and you just feel freaking good.
Hey.
And go from there.
Yeah. I want to piggyback with something that you mentioned before, because you brought it up a couple of times now. It's the idea of the practical. Like I have definitely started getting more accustomed to that concept more recently than before, because being able to exhibit a kind of positive form of control on the way that I want to live and the kind of life that I'm working to create for myself and for others too. But like if I can do that, if I can create that new thing, however long it takes, then, or however long it needs to, then I can ultimately change the thing that was creating the bad feelings in the first place. And like when I connected those dots in recent years, I'm like, wait, what? You mean like I can do the thing that makes it so that doesn't need to be there in the first place? And then when I go and I do that, whatever's left over is like, okay, that's my life that happened. That's my wounding. That's my trauma. And then I can be much more deliberate about addressing those wounds now that I can see them more clearly in a space that I know that I've created. So then it kind of like removes a lot of the subtext that made things confusing before.
That's amazing, man. Kudos to you for acknowledging that power within yourself.
Yeah. That's a big realization.
Here's the fun part. It's going to get better.
Yeah, the better it gets, the better it gets.
Yes.
That's what my
now,
instructor
so long as you stay
me.
focused on that part. But Palace, I think you had something that you were going to say.
Oh yeah. So you were just making me think of like through this this training that I'm in right now, and we're talking about kind of the the different zones of comfort. And so you're saying initially like come into this place where you're comfortable or something. What is it you said now? Basically come and recognize these places in your life that you can be comfortable in, or tuning in to parts of you that you might be able to explore, right? And then in listening to things that you were talking about, it's moving from that and not being afraid to ask for help, not being afraid to, to take that next step. And we call that the stretch zone. And so it's right. It's moving from that place of being super comfortable, going, okay, I got this, and then moving into the stretch zone. But also there's this delicate interplay of when you're moving into the stretch zone, when are you going to tip over into panic? Like the panic zone, like it's too much, right? And so it's being able to start being more consciously aware of oneself, of needing to move into the stretch zone. Because if we're all always comfortable, and if we never have a slight little tack that we're sitting on in life, then we're never going to grow. We're not going to transform. We're not going to become. We're not going to explore. We're not going to be able to create anything different. And so it was just making me think of that simple, this chart. It's kind of like a bullseye of kind of the comfort zone, and the stretch zone is second, and then the panic zone's out here, right? And it's trying to teach people how to be able to explore new ideas, new ways of thinking, new ways of being, and understanding that that the panic zone may come into play, but you can always come back into the stretch zone. And the stretch zone is a good place. That is that place between the pause lines, right? That's the place where you're going to grow. So that was just what I wanted to, the way I wanted to frame it.
Yeah.
There you go. Yeah, I think it's all, everything. And I'm talking everything, the good, the bad, the ugly, the stuff that you thought wasn't supposed to happen to you, all happens. It happens for you, not to you. And I had to make that discovery on my own, by myself, in that dark room, in order for me to realize its power. Because here's another saying, if you're breathing, there's a damn good reason.
Right.
Because I'm not dead.
Right.
So I'm still here. Alex, you are still here. Palace, you went through some shit. You're still freaking here.
Yeah. Same with you, Xavier, twice now.
Right.
That one thing that we're talking about, right? Twice now in that direction. So it's like, what's coming up for me is that there's people that are watching, and they're like, so you're telling me that this horrible thing happened in my life for me, like my family was killed in this thing, or this car accident, or cancer, or whatever, right? It's like, who are you to tell me that this happened for me, But it's how to reframe that, because the three of us here have all been through serious stuff, and that's why we are where we're at, and we can talk from a place of deep loss and fear and regret and confusion until we move through the thing, right? So how would you, because it's like it's easier to say having a new framework to define that concept, right? What do you guys think is another way to discuss that for people that are like, yeah, just no?
Okay, so definitely when it comes to those kinds of emotional events, traumas, woundings, what have you, it's definitely critical to not just like feel your feelings, but actually exploring the depth of those things. Like if someone's family has, using the previous example, if someone's family is completely wiped out, it's not enough to just say, oh, well, you feel sad, you feel grief, you feel loss, just like feel those feelings. No, like you need to deliberately explore the depths of those feelings. And that doesn't feel good. That feels scary. That feels just as bad as the grief and loss of the whole family. And yet it's necessary, because what that individual would be doing at that point is moving through the past event, and they would be reaching emotionally, psychologically, maybe even spiritually, that point in between. They'd be reaching that pause point. And then until someone does that, they're going to continue running off in the direction of the past, right? And when that happens and they never give themselves the chance to get to that pause moment, then they're also, while yes, they may try at different times for different reasons, they're never actually going to be able to progress forward with the practicality aspect that Xavier is mentioning, right? So yeah, there's definitely like a critical emotional, spiritual element to that particular type of event that needs addressing.
Yep.
And like you can't do like self-love and affirmations to get away from that. Like that's not that's the kind of like practical creating your reality kind of practice type of thing, you know. So I'll basically just end it with there, because I think Xavier has a lot more to say about the practicality of reaching that point.
Well, yeah, I think what we need to recognize here is like when you're in war, you do what you have to do to survive. So when stuff like that happens, yes, it sucks. And there's a time and place for the affirmations and the feel good feelings. But when you're in that moment, be there, and be there, like you said, Alex, 100%. Explore those feelings, get as deep and dirty as you need to. So when you get, I have a saying, one of my mentors, he said, you got to go through it to get to it.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's no pretending here. We don't do any of that think positive BS when you're not willing to do the work behind the positivity. There's a difference. And I think once you're willing to get into your emotions and be just straight up naked, just butt naked with those emotions, and be willing to be vulnerable. Like, this stuff sucks. Whatever it is, I don't care what it is.
Risking exposure.
Yeah. I mean, you're going to have the right, if you're mindful about it. You know, I'm not talking the person that's living by default. I'm talking the deliberate creator. If you are putting your energy in the right place, the right people will show up, and you will feel good about exposing the vulnerability to the right people. And that's the chance, because love has a different frequency to it. And sometimes you got to sift through some of the people that don't know how to express love
right
in the right way to get to the diamond. And if you practice enough, you're going to find that core nucleus of people that you can just be with.
It's true.
You know? And so, yeah, it's gonna hurt sometimes. But there's a saying that my wife bought when we were courting, and it was just a book of old Zen koans, and one of them said, "You must love like it's never going to hurt." And that was out of all those pages, that's the one that sticks with me today, because I have chosen to represent the highest self that I possibly can. You know, I'm still human, so I have my days. But for the most part, I represent the highest frequency, and I happen to call it love. And so for me, I'm going to do my best to do whatever that feels like at the highest level. That includes not judging people for where they are, having patience, even though I know that there's a better path for them, but they still have to go on their own journey. I can't force anything upon anyone. I can only align with it. You feel the difference?
Yes.
So for me, it's all about showing and being my highest self so they can see the light and they have to choose to go towards it or not. I'm like that body of water, that mass of water in the Serengeti. You know, animals will risk their lives to get to that water. That to me represents truth. Whatever that version of truth is for you. I know what my truth is, and I will resonate at that frequency. I don't have to worry myself with chasing people.
So it's like going through all of that, all of those levels and layers, all of those the deep work that you have to do. Like you say, it's not the people that are living by default, right? It's the people that are living with intention and exploration and trying to move through something. But no matter what that thing is, that deepest, darkest point that we start with of whatever happens that we have to move through, coming out to the frequency of love, as Xavier says, that is a transformation and that is a beginning. It's an ending, or it's a shifting to a beginning. It's a new part of life, a new framework, we are new after going through the thing. I mean, we're new all the time, but the big things that come up in life shift and shake and, you know, do all the things to us. And coming out the other end, it is a new beginning. It is creativity. It is a new opportunity.
Living. So this phrase that keeps popping up, living by default, that's after hearing what you just got done saying, it's kind of connecting the dots. Like living by default is kind of like the resistance to it's the resistance to leaving the past where it is, and a resistance to moving towards the future. And it's almost like when people start living by default, then they're avoiding that pause space.
That could be led by a perfect example when Palace was saying she partied to avoid the pause.
Right. Yeah. Thanks for tying that in, because I was thinking it and then you said it. So
here's the thing, man. We're all connected. We all have some horrible stories. We have some wonderful stories. The question is, where is your focus? We began this conversation by talking about how blessed we are in this state, like in this country. You can say what you want about our current condition, our state of being, but we're here in this country. We have a roof over our head. We are richer than 80% of this globe. Even if we're making minimum wage. So, you can't convince me you'll never be able to get me into victim mode, especially after knowing what I know and going through what I've gone through.
Something you mentioned before about like seeing possibilities, that's like part of the essence of beginnings. Because where there are beginnings, there is a sense of nothing, but then there's a realization for a need for something. And I talk about this in my solo video on this, where it's like the possibilities are expansive. They're astronomical. Like the number of perceivable possibilities is beyond just what, is beyond the number of stars that are countable within our own system. So then, people moving from that default, that determinism, to giving themselves a chance to be in that pause space, to seeing the possibilities, to then exercising the power of choice and this free will that everyone touts so much about, you know. I mean, it's there. It's just being able to move out of the determinism of the default, getting into that pause space so that you can see the possibilities of what's future, what's ahead. And that's part of what hope is.
Mm-hmm.
Giving someone hope is helping them to see the possibilities so that they can be like, oh my God, there is something beyond this. There is a forward. There is a new beginning. You know,
Yep.
Consciously we might be able to think that way, but we haven't felt or experienced it that way. And that's what keeps us dragging that old ball and chain behind us for so long. Because, you know, I think people are scared of that hope too, but that's a whole different conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think you had it right, Palace. If you think about this, imagine, if you will, a whole world. You're going to go out about your day. You're going to be out, and you're going to see people with their eyes open. But ask yourself, are they really seeing? Are they really what's going on? Are they just playing in the matrix? Because when people are awake and they're ready to do the work, that's when the CLN enters their vortex. And they're like, how did this happen? How did I get here? Well, because you were ready for it.
Yeah.
And
Exhibit A.
Right. So that's when I invite people to tap in, tune in, and get turned on by the Palaces, the Alexes, even myself. You know, we all have a story to share, and we all come from a place of love where we use our life as an example. You know, my motto is my life at your service. And I'm dead serious about that. So I think we all have a version of that here within the CLN, which is a great segue for Palace to invite people to take some freaking action.
Absolutely. That's where I can hit this little button right here. But for people to take action, it takes requiring, take that first step. It may not be a whole step, it may be a half step, but you got to take a step and recognize.
Crawl if you have to.
Exactly. Crawl, slither, rolled across the floor, like just get some momentum going.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, everybody here within this group is going to take care of you, and we all come from a place of love. And words that come to mind are peace, love, harmony is a good one. That's the only thing I'm interested in. So, it's kind of like the Hippocratic Oath. We don't do any harm here.
Exactly. It is all about do no harm and help and serve and create space to come together. And like, no matter where somebody is on their journey, if, I like to say that we're all seekers, but kind of where we are in our seeker journey. And some people are just beginning, they're just starting to explore. They're totally filled with doubt, but there's a little inkling of like, maybe there's something else out there. Right. Or further along with having that other experience, or further along to that, where they're in a place to share and teach or whatever. Right. But we're all seekers, and we all started out at some point.
For as long as you're living, like Xavier said before, as long as you're breathing, there's that next thing, that new beginning waiting for you.
Yep. And it's always available. You just have to choose to believe it and then be willing to do the work to get to it. We got to go through it first.
Through it to
get to it. And then once we get there, it's another level. I love the fact that you use the words levels and layers, Palace. That's one of my favorite sayings.
Yeah.
Because it's all of life has a level and a layer to it. And there's nothing, no subject that does not have levels and layers to it. Nothing.
And the more you do it, the better it gets. And the better it gets, the better it gets.
Absolutely.
Ooh, boy, we got a bunch of love waiting on you here. So get yourself in here, or otherwise it's push-ups.
And he means it. All right. I think this is a good place to probably segue into
Yeah, I got. You know what? You mentioned the word seeking. I'm gonna be seeking the restroom right now because my bladder is full.
All right, Xavier, I'm going to let you tell people how to connect with us.
All right, so all you got to do, folks, is take action. Reach out to us. I'm sure there's going to be a button around this video somewhere that is a link, perhaps, that will take you to the CLN. And from there, we just want to welcome you home. I'll pause for dramatic effect. Welcome home. But yeah, we just have love. We have a pure desire to just resonate our different frequencies with you. And we'll take care of you until you are ready to take care of yourself.
I love it. Perfect. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. Thank you, guys. And I look forward to 1 month from now when we get to do this again. And we'll be talking about the next part of the transformational journey.
Fourth Monday of each month, right?
Yep.
Fourth Monday.
Yeah.
I
Fourth
wrote it
Mondays.
down.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.